Assalamu alaikum and a very warm welcome to PTV World. You're watching Views on News and I am your host Tayyaba Nisar Khan. We're going to talk about a very significant topic, which is, of course, Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif's visit in Egypt for the COP27, which is taking place under the United Nations as well in Egypt. And of course, the President Abdul Al-Sisi received the Prime Minister himself as well. A very, very significant conference this is, because this was established in 1995 and it has been going on. But in 2016, a very significant milestone took place. That was the Paris Agreement, and that has been the baseline and the framework for all the future impacts and the, of course, suggestions that are being discussed on the climate change as well, and of course on the climate action, because that is very, very significant. The Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif has, of course, very significantly and very vehemently talked about how climate justice is a very significant part in the international community's framework, and it should be implemented more cohesively and more rigorously, because that is something Pakistan has also faced as well. Pakistan, of course, faced the flood situation recently in this year, and of course not just this year but also the previous years as well. But this year the impact was very tantamount. The impact created $33 billion losses plus $16 billion losses, which of course tantamounts to a lot of loss of infrastructure and of course also the other areas such as food security and whatnot. And this is what the Climate Change Conference is going to be highlighted, and that is being highlighted by the Prime Minister himself as well. He is going to deliberate upon the ways to address the global environmental challenges. And the fact is that the Prime Minister himself has also talked about very, very important things that he, for instance, quote unquote, said that without financial support, the developing countries will continue to remain exposed to the multifarious threats of the climate change, which of course shows us how significant this part and this unfortunately issue is in itself, because this is something that has to be highlighted on the world. And Prime Minister Imran, of course, Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif himself, he is the one who is bringing all of this up, and he is now going to be the co-chair of a very, very significant conference as well, and that is the climate change and sustainability of the vulnerable communities, because Pakistan has faced that as well. Shahbaz Sharif, the Prime Minister, is of course highlighting all of this at the COP27. Of course, we will be talking to our panelists regarding this as well. We have in guest studios, which are the, of course, very, very significant guests in the studio, which have also, you know, taken part in many different activities of Pakistan as well, and of course making sure that climate action is implemented in Pakistan as well. We have Dr. Syed Mahmood Nasir, who is the former IG Forest. Thank you so much for joining us. And we're, of course, also joined by Mr. Javed Siddiq, who's a senior journalist. Thank you so much for joining us as well. We will also have a Skype guest as well, Dr. Shahid, who is also a water expert. Of course, now I'm going to go to you, Mr. Javed Siddiq. Something very, very significant, that is the COP27, right? Now we know that climate justice and climate sustainability and climate action, the fact that there's a solidarity, to talk about solidarity going on right now. Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif has been highlighting that not just in the SEO conference and the UNGA, but right now also in the COP27, and UNSG himself, the Antonio Guterres, he himself has also lauded the work of Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif. Do you think he will be successfully able to convince them, as he has earlier done, and of course bring in more impact from the international community?
Yes, I think Prime Minister of Pakistan will present his case very effectively at this platform, COP27 at Sharm El-Sheikh. I think Pakistan, as you know, the entire world knows, is the worst hit country by this climate change. And the climate change that we are experiencing, the world is experiencing, is not a creation of Pakistan. It is not the doing of Pakistan. Pakistan is supposedly and really, Pakistan is not contributing towards the carbon emission in a massive way, the way other countries are doing. So I think we are the worst hit countries, and the recent floods that you have mentioned, that 33 million people have been hit by these massive floods in Pakistan, and they need to be rehabilitated, and we need to reconstruct and rebuild our infrastructure which has been damaged by these floods. And also, you know, we have lost so many of our crops, and we are likely to lose them because of this climate change. So I think Prime Minister has a very good opportunity to present Pakistan's case to the world. And these terms which you have used, the global phenomena that we are witnessing here in Pakistan and elsewhere, that the climate change is bringing so many miseries to the people, and particularly the people of those countries which are the worst hit by this climate change. I think the Prime Minister has said that if we want to save the future of this globe, we have to act, and this is the time to act. And I think tomorrow and the next session that he is co-chairing in Sharm el-Sheikh, he will be very forcefully presenting our case, not only our case, but the case of the entire countries which are the worst hit and the most affected countries by the climate change.
Of course, he's not just going to present, as you've rightly pointed out, our case, but also all the developing states' case as well. Of course, let's go to Syed, Mahmood, Nasir Sahab. We know that the Prime Minister, Shehbaz Sharif, is there, and he has talked about it significant times as well. The climate justice in itself, Pakistan being one of the lowest carbon emission producing countries, being in the top 5 countries that are the most vulnerable to climate change. Do you think the international community is paying heed, or is it just for the show and pomp?
I can see spark in your question. And just 30 years ago, I was probably your age, when the Pakistan Prime Minister, then Prime Minister, Mia Nawaz Sharif was there in the Rio Summit in 1992, where this climate change convention was signed, then ratified later, and as of now, 27 conference of the apex meetings have been held. But we are all also forgetting that it's these days it's not just COP27. There is another COP ongoing, that is COP14 of the Ramsar Convention, being held in China, co-hosted by China and Switzerland. Why the media is not highlighting that and highlighting this one? There is a big reason. The impact is too much across the all sectors of the economies globally. The population, global population in 1992 was almost half of what it is today. The carbon emissions in 1992 were almost a bit more than 40%, around 40% of what it is today, and it is expected to reach 550 parts per million if we go on business as usual. And what you are saying with that spark in your eyes, that we are the most vulnerable, we are hearing it for the last 20 years. This year, the COP started when Egypt lighted up one of the 3 pyramids, the Khufra. There are 3, Khufu, Khafra and Mankara. And I pray that the mystery of the COP will not be the same as that of the pyramids. So let's hope. But the good thing this time is that climate change has reached the doorsteps of not only vulnerable countries like ours, it's also the West.
Right.
Floods, super fires, forest fires.
Absolutely.
Drought. China is facing it. Germany is facing it. Entire Europe is facing it. Lake, what was that? Lake Harry Potter in the United States, it just disappeared in a few days. A huge lake disappeared. So things have reached their home. Nevertheless, all these countries are taking domestic actions as well as international action. And one good thing is that the corporate sector globally, including the huge corporate sector of Pakistan, is also taking keen interest in climate change mitigation.
Right. We really hope that circular economy is more developed in the corporate sector, and the industrialists also realize the significance, how important the basic climate action is, and to, of course, increase the renewable sources of energy as well. Let's go to Dr. Shahid, the water expert, on the Skype as well. Of course, we know that the Antonio Guterres, the United Nations Secretary General himself, has said in his speech at the COP27 that the world is reaching 1.1 degrees Celsius, and of course, the baseline is 1.5 degrees Celsius and 2 degrees Celsius, and we're quickly reaching the upper limit, which is, of course, very significant because we know that Pakistan has seen the Gulf impact as well, the glacial melt, and also the lake outbursts as well. You're a water expert. Could you tell us more about how we can curtail this entire Gulf situation?
Thank you very much for asking me this very important question. How Pakistan is being affected. Sometimes we are facing serious shortages of water, and on the other part of the year, we are many parts of Pakistan under the water. Uh, but let me start with uh, the, the the sort of comments on the um, COP27. That is not really an opportunity not to be seen as an opportunity to ask for more funds for the miseries for our people that's being affected by the floods and other climate change related disasters. That is the platform where we should look for better collaboration and sharing of knowledge and technologies for the long-term investment into our plans. If we have really a good plans, we have put up good plans together that we need to. That the work, the kind for the kind of future we should be looking for in 30, 40, 50 years down the road. What kind of Pakistan we'll hand over to our children and their children. So if we have that kind of short-term and long-term plans, we can easily then attract the knowledge and investments and the technologies to address these issues. Not only we should be looking for these technologies from the West, our own research institutions should also be working on it, and we should also take our science and technology and agriculture research institutions more seriously to provide them the needed resources so that they can initiate research on the issues that we are facing now, and I'm afraid will be more seriously facing these issues down the road.
Right, Dr.
So
Shahid, you mentioned.
how we can address the issues like floods and the droughts is in one sentence. The answer is the better management of our all sources of water. We are not only mismanaging our river water resources, we are also mismanaging our underground resources. On the glaciers, I would suggest that the Pakistan should approach other regional countries and go for the regional climate change adaptation and mitigation plans together with our neighboring countries in the South Asia and beyond. So that can be another sort of platform from where we can collaborate within our own region. One example that we always quote for when we face smog in Lahore, that we are controlling from our side of the agriculture, rice, burning of the rice debris. But when on the other side of the border, farmers burn their rice fields, we also get this smoke from there that gets the main cause of the smog in Lahore and neighboring parts of that area. So for that kind of issues, we should be able to raise these issues, develop strategies at the regional level also.
Absolutely, climate management and climate mitigation is very significant. You mentioned that we need 30 to 50 years. Dr. Shahid, do we have 30 to 50 years? Because they are saying in the United Nations report that Pakistan will run out of water by 2030.
What I'm saying is that we have to have short-term and long-term plans. Some issues you cannot really immediately invest in and mitigate that. You have to have the long-term strategies also. But those issues that we can start immediately working on, we need to do that. And I also said before that at this stage, Pakistan should think of every rupee that it invests should have some meaning to reduce our climate change vulnerability, in no matter in what sector we invest, whether it's invest in energy, in agriculture, in rural development, in construction, wherever we are, private sector or government, we should be very conscious how we can invest it where it can give us good results, but also help us reduce our vulnerability to climate change.
Right, it's an emergency. It's a climate emergency, which we are recognizing, but many of the people are not still recognizing. Many industrialists who have a very big stakehold in this are not recognizing this as well. And of course, the United States had dropped out after entering the Paris Agreement as well. Exactly, and then we rejoined after President Biden came as well. But let's talk about how Dr. Shahid was also talking about the technology transfer, the capacity building. So let's go back on the responsibility of the larger countries, because that is absolutely massive and very important. How can we ensure, how can Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif ensure, like he has been of course, to build capacity in the developing countries like Pakistan, and the technology transfer and of course the technological collaboration with countries of developing countries?
I think this is very important, and the Prime Minister has made it clear, whatever he has said in his remarks, that a global effort is required to basically face the climate change, that is the climate change which is bringing these disastrous effects. So I think we need to share the advanced countries of the world who are responsible for this massive climate change globally. They need to realize that they are responsible for these disasters, and therefore it is their obligation to share the technologies, to share the resources and the expertise they have with those countries which are not capable of doing it, I mean facing these climate change effects in an effective way. So that is the message there, and I think it's everybody is affected by this climate change. When the temperature rises, you know, I and everybody else is affected by that, and when it drops, we feel that temperature is dropping, and we are feeling the consequences of that.
It's that drastic.
Exactly, and again, the water shortages that we are talking about in the future, all these things have to be tackled not by one country or a single country, but we need a collective action for that. And I think the Prime Minister has pointed it out that we need a collective action. And the good thing is that the Executive Secretary of the United Nations at this conference has said that a backslide on the issue of climate change is not affordable. If we backslide, then huge disasters will be experienced by the countries all over the world. So I think there is a realization on the part of the United Nations and on the part of the important countries, the United States, the European Union, China, Japan and other countries. And if they put their act together, I think it is easy to handle this crisis.
Absolutely, putting the act together and going from the mindset of aid to climate justice, to taking and demanding what's actually rightfully ours as well. And of course, this has been highlighted by the Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, by the Foreign Minister Bilal Bhutto Zardari very effectively, and of course by the Climate Change Minister as well, Ms. Shadi Rahman as well. Okay, now let's talk about how significant the renewable energy sector is. We know that we still use non-renewable energy sources, and that has been causing a lot of damage to the climate issue and the climate impact in different countries. This is a transnational issue. We need to bring this up a little more, when we have been bringing this up as well. What do you think can Pakistan do to bring the non-renewable sources to a halt and bring up the renewable sources more?
We need to a paradigm shift from old timers like mine. We should give it to youngsters like you, but those with capacity. And countries like India, China, Brazil, who built their capacity initially, they earned billions from the CDM 1997 till 2010-12. Now those countries which are ready with carbon offsets in the regulatory market. Gabon with 90 million tons of carbon from forests. Indonesia, Malaysia, Papua New Guinea, they are ready to sell their carbon offsets. They build the capacities of their youngsters. The little money which we earned from the CDM from the previous cycle was coming from the private sector. If we think we can do it with old-timers like mine, it won't work. The structure of the ministries with bureaucrats coming, going, rotating, and is one path. There is another ministry of IT where the IT export board. I was surprised to see youngsters, CEOs. I visited the National Center for Artificial Intelligence at NUST. Youngsters having full power, and they are doing wonders. They are making robots. They are making deep learning algorithms in Pakistan, exporting it, bringing it billions of dollars without government interference. So we have to deregulate as much as possible and give trust to our youngsters, give them the liberty to work. Otherwise, the brain drain is already ongoing.
Right. Dr. Nasir, I really like your inclusive approach over here, because that is very important for the older generations and the younger generations to come together on and bridge the gap that is, of course, causing so many issues as well. And one of them is the climate action. So let's talk about how significant the bridge between these two generations is. The foreign minister is a very young person as well. The Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif is trying to bring in this inclusive approach in itself as well. But let's talk about how significant the capacity building is as well. Do you think we can rather take the carbon offsets from the developed countries? Will they be willing to give them to Pakistan, which of course hasn't industrialized in itself as much as we can?
You can gauge this question with the rates of carbon credits. Those who from the West who want to buy from us, some transactions have happened. I can refer to forest carbons, $10 to $15 a ton. Okay. The rates in the EU, 80 to 100 euro to 150 euros per ton. There are a lot of middle persons in the voluntary market. Some call them red cowboys. They are ready to take them away. Now, do we need to see it happen, or we have to build the capacity of our youngsters? And nobody stops the youngsters to build their own capacity. Believe in me, when I was in the ministry, nobody was there to guide me. I had to work for whole 18, 20 hours a day to teach myself. So it should be there. There are now many people like Sir and others who can guide the people how to do it. Just 2 days back, I was in Karachi. K-Trade, a private sector firm, invited some CEOs, a small gathering. Some were from, I think, CASP Group, some from Angro, and they were talking about how the corporate sector of Pakistan, and most of them were youngsters, how the corporate sector of Pakistan can develop our own voluntary carbon market rather than going to the West. Right. We have the capacity, the will, and nobody is going to inject that capacity.
Right.
And if we think that the West will transfer it to us, they will never. What the assets, the social capital they have, they are not going to give it to you. You have to build your own.
Isn't it a responsibility though?
No, this is there. It's a competitive world. You agree or disagree.
But I think
but that is what China and India are also saying.
But the term justice, climate justice,
absolutely,
is actually it conveys the sense that justice has to be done.
Yes.
And he's right in saying that the big powers are not, or the advanced countries are not going to share the technologies and knowledge to combat the effects of climate change, but climate justice has to be done.
Yes.
And we must seek it
absolutely
from the world through the United Nations and through other forums.
And we have successfully been able to seek it through the UNSG as well when he came and visited Pakistan. And of course, also talked about how Pakistan needed this and talked about himself, the climate justice, after talking to the PM as well. Okay, let's go to Dr. Shahid. We know that the flood situation and the water issue, the stagnation of water in many areas, is causing a lot of waterborne diseases, the vector diseases, and also not just that, but also the food insecurity in the country. There's a direct impact and then there's an indirect impact. How do you think Pakistan can also, number one, demand the international community to help us in giving the rehabilitation and, of course, combating the vector diseases, the other diseases of the vulnerable communities like women and children? And also, how can Pakistan try and ensure that these diseases are not spread and the food security can also be curtailed?
Let me first say that it's our issue, and we need to own it.
Right.
This is not the first flood we are facing. We've been facing floods from 40s, 60s, and then major flood in 2010. And we need to have our own plans to address these issues before asking for the world to support us. And unfortunately, we know that we are facing scarce resources, and sometimes required resources are not available. But we have to have a plan, as I said before, that short term and long term need to start doing something in the beginning, whatever resources are available with. Second, the first impact it's going to create is on our food security, and I'm seeing that attention is diverted from the flood affected areas now to the other issues. If we will fail to sow all areas that where we used to grow wheat before, if we fail to do that, and the area under wheat is reduced significantly, that will have a major impact on our food security, and we will face multiple challenges of food insecurity in different levels and different areas. The first thing that we needed to immediately focus on was to provide or to make seeds available in the in the flood affected areas as soon as possible. Still, we have some time left in the wheat sowing during November. If we can have more area under wheat in flood affected areas, I feel that we can still manage the damage and reduce our vulnerability to food insecurity.
Right. Also, Dr. Shahid, yes, please continue.
Yeah, on the waterborne diseases, the global community, particularly those UNICEF and other, they are there to support, and we do have good capacity to absorb the new knowledge and technology, and we have developed few very good examples of dealing with dengue and polio. So we can have an all-out campaign in those areas with our own resources and with the support from the international institutions. It has to be done because quite often these kind of new infections can spread and then have a sort of larger impact on the communities.
Right. Dr. Shahid, do you think that building more dams could help Pakistan, or would it be more detrimental in creating more flood-like situation?
I intentionally didn't use the word dams. You know, in Pakistan, the construction of dams have become so political. I was saying management of water. Management dam is only one option. And we have to go for that also. but there are several other options cheaper than this that we should
Right.
also immediately start working on. One,
Right, such as?
that flood water, diversion of flood water and surface storage somewhere. And we have
Right.
3 river beds that India blocked under Indus Water Treaty. Those can also be utilized as on surface water storage. And we also have to have underground water storage facilities that can also help us not only the water storage but also improve the water quality of underground water. And dams that surely will help us not only control the flow when it is needed, but also the storage for the rest of the year when we feel the shortages.
Right. Right. Thank you, Dr. Shahid, for that answer. Now, Dr. Nasir, I want to ask you, how significant is the early warning system in all of this situation? Because, of course, climate change is not going to end today. It's going to continue and it's going to exacerbate in the next few years. And next year might be more difficult for Pakistan, and we have to have an early warning system. What is your proposal for the early warning systems in Pakistan?
Very difficult question it is. I've been seeing components of many projects having early warning systems, and every time they are asking for new early warning system. And when the catastrophe comes, see the predictions. This year's flood, it was forecast was 40% more rain. It was 500 times more
Absolutely.
rain.
Five times.
Unprecedented.
Yes, and what Dr. Shahid was talking about the water issue, please have a look at the Recharge Pakistan project, which is approved by the Global Climate Facility. It is a $150 million project, which is aimed to store, wise use of floods. And the Ramsar COP, which is the conference of the parties, which is ongoing now, was the main trigger for bringing that project into Pakistan after the 2010 floods. So early warning systems for floods, if they were the miracle or panacea, the floods would not play havoc in the United States, in Australia, in
Absolutely.
Europe. Things are changing so fast these days. So there's no harm in investing in early warning systems, but adaptation, resilience, flood welcome. Our friend, we visited China before this project with a delegation of 10. Our friend from Balochistan, who is a tribal man, after visiting the Yangtze River and seeing the Chinese model of floodplain management, he said, okay, name this project as flood welcome policy.
Interesting.
And
Changing the perspective
yes.
entirely.
So Dr. Faiz Kakar, and coming back to Pakistan, when I was there in the standing committees of the parliament, and the parliamentarians were so angry initially, so angry that we are distributing aid to flood victims, and you are talking about flood welcome policy. Now that project is here. It's the time that everybody should take part and make it successful. Otherwise, it will go away silently, and then we will not even know what happened.
That's an interesting perspective that you've given. Of course, all the parliamentarians and us, we're all learning together as well, and hopefully we will learn more as well. Now, Javed Siddiq Saab, of course, something very significant, that is the human aspect, the human security aspect of all of this. People, 1.9 million households have gone under poverty. They're going to go under poverty, apart from all the people who have already been under poverty. And not just that, there's an increase of 5.9% in multidimensional poverty issues as well. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif is there in the COP27. He's been raising effective voices as well. But then again, there's so many people, and we have to repatriate them as well. How do you think we can ensure that?
Well, I think Prime Minister has made it very clear, and he has said that Pakistan has been underwater, and 33 million people have been affected, and they have to be rehabilitated. And Pakistan has been urging the international community and our friendly countries to come out with some help for the rehabilitation of these people and rebuilding of the infrastructure that has been destroyed by these floods. The world is not responding positively or as we were expecting. There are so many factors, a host of factors are at play in this situation. But I think Pakistan needs to sensitize the world, the big countries, the important countries, the advanced countries of the world who are capable of helping out Pakistan in mitigating the effects of these floods. I think Pakistan is trying to make its case very effectively. Prime Minister is doing it. The Foreign Minister is also helping him out.
Right.
Our experts, like my colleagues sitting here, they can also sensitize the people here, the institutions here, particularly the big business of Pakistan. They're rich people living a very, very, wealthy life, and I think they need to take care of this issue. They should also contribute to reduce the level of poverty in Pakistan. Some people have contributed to the national effort to basically combat the effects of the recent floods, but not enough has been done. I think our people, the rich people, the upper classes have the capacity to do more for these people who have been affected so badly by these floods. They should come out with generosity, and that is what is required. And also the international community, they did help us out in some way, but the response to the United Nations appeal for the appeal for the aid and help has not been responded that we were expecting to. That at that level we have not been able to get the aid. There are reasons for that, but I think the world should realize that Pakistan is a case. Here, the first country which has been so badly affected by this climate change, and this is the time to deliver on the pledges which they had made to the world.
Absolutely. So many pledges will be made in this conference as well. And a world richest person is buying $44 billion deals rather than helping the people who are in need as well, such as in Pakistan and other areas which have been affected and hit by the climate as well. Let's talk about the local community, Siddiq Saab. We know that the local community has been very vibrant in trying to help out the people of Pakistan. But right now, somehow the attention of the media has been diverted. I'm not going to mention where it has been diverted, unfortunately, but we know that it has been diverted away from the people of the flood affectees who have been actually suffering. And the winters are here now. They need more amenities. They need more help and generosity, as you've mentioned. How can we bring the focus back over there?
I think that is the ugliest part of the whole situation, that the media is not paying attention because media's attention has been diverted by other issues. The political issues, particularly in Pakistan, are engaging the attention of media.
Exactly. Not the right time to bring in rallies.
It's not the
right
right
now.
time. But I think the media, for their own reasons, is focusing on those issues. The political fight that we are witnessing, the toxic political situation that prevails in Pakistan, and that has diverted the attention of the mainstream media as well as the social media.
Right.
So that is why we are ignoring those people, and those people who have been affected by these floods are in a miserable situation.
Absolutely.
And they need help.
Right.
Of the local communities, the rich people of Pakistan, and as well as the international community. But unfortunately, you are right that the media is not looking at these people and their misery. They did cover these floods in the initial days, but later on, the political events, the mega events, have overshadowed everything else.
The political chaos that has been created,
Yes.
I would like to highlight over here. Of course, we're at the culmination of our show, but I would like to ask our Skype guest as well, Dr. Shahid, the water expert. You've talked about so many significant policies and a scientific approach that you've taken in your answers as well. What is the last comment you'd like to make regarding resilience, building resilience in Pakistan's climate change policy?
First of all, we need to have as I said, our own climate change policy that we trust, we believe in, and we want to implement it no matter whether the global community requires it or not. We strongly feel it is our own requirement. We are doing it for ourselves and our future generations. Second, as we quite frequently face floods, we have to have a larger plan to deal with these floods. And even early warning system doesn't work very well with those communities if they know for even 4 months ahead that there will be more rains, because there's a huge area and a huge population. You cannot afford to mobilize that to shift those populations out of the area uh, well before time. Normally, they wait until they see that the risk is there, and then they start moving. Though it is very helpful, but quite often we fail to implement the sort of instructions, the risk calculated, and then sharing it with the communities, and reduce the risk of their lives and livelihoods. What I'm
Right. Thank
saying
you so
is
much.
that we need to plan. We need to plan a special program for those areas which are more vulnerable to floods, and
Right.
and create sort of areas where we can those can host those communities when it comes to the flood season. And sometimes those areas also have nearby areas of deserts. Deserts sometimes face droughts. Then these communities during the drought can also host the flood, the drought affected areas. So there can be several options, but we need to plan and allocate budgets on these issues, so that even if there is no attention of media or social media, if there are institutions working on it, that the work on the support to flood affected communities
Right.
should continue. There should not be a kind of media attention only that can attract the sort of support for the affected area. We know if
Right.
our area is affected, our people are affected, and we need to support that. And third thing, on this energy, on this sort of water management, on agriculture, we have to redo the agriculture in the next 30-40 years, and starting from now, and making it more and more regenerative. So as you also mentioned, this cyclical sort of
Right.
economies, so
Right.
that
Thank you,
we
Dr.
can
Shahid.
have more sort of environment friendly, and then more localized rethink and then reuse policies on our resources.
Right. Thank
uh,
you, Dr. Shahid, for those wonderful comments that you've made. Lastly, brief comments. Dr. Nasir, of course, we know that there has to be a bridge. I'm going to give you the question that Mr. Javed Siddiqui has raised as well. I'm going to push that to you and ask, how can we bridge the gap between the experts and the other people? How can we bridge that gap?
You should have given this question a day earlier. But I think there is no gap. It's just a matter of communication. I quote an example. A few days back, I was deep in the desert in Balochistan, Washak, till Palantak, till the Iran area. It was a 93-kilometer long desert journey. What we saw that people were cutting desert trees, the tagas, Aloxylon persicum, in huge numbers, and we couldn't tell them anything. There was no alternate to fuel wood, and winter has come also there. There is no flood in that area. It just struck me. I just sent a message to the Rawalpindi National Cleaner Production Center, Dr. Shahid, that I think your solar cookers can save at least half of these trees. Immediately, he as a team of youngsters, brilliant mind, immediately he said, we will send a few as donation, we will train a few local entrepreneurs to manufacture their own and sell them to the local communities. So we need brilliant minds to bridge this gap with solid experience, solid otherwise they were struggling in cities, in urban areas with solar cookers, nobody was buying. They are doing it every year in the environmental mela in Ayub Park, but nobody is buying it.
Right, so your point is to have the motivation to help out the country in itself. Patriotism is what we're bringing back to. Javed Siddiq Saab, how can we build the resilience of the vulnerable communities
I
that have been affected?
think we need to sensitize these communities. We need to educate them, enlighten them on the changing scenario. The world is changing, the climate change and other environmental changes that are taking place are going to affect the lives of the people, common people. So we need to educate them. I think media has a very important role to play in this. But unfortunately, we have already talked that media is looking the other side.
Sensationalism.
Yeah, sensationalism and other issues, political issues have overtaken everything. And I think we should come out of the shadow of this political boxing, and we need to pay more attention to the miseries of the common people, and particularly the flood affected people and the people who are going to be affected by the food shortages, water shortages, and all these. And these issues need to be highlighted through the media.
Right, of course. Thank you so much for joining us, Javed Siddiq Saab. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Nasir. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Shahid. Of course, this is a time for us to bring back the attention to the people who are suffering in Pakistan. So many people, 1,800 people have died, 33 million people have been displaced as well. They need relief, rehabilitation. This is not a time to hold rallies. This is not a time to politicize the entire state institutions and sentiments as well. This is a time to collectively work together for the flood situation and the repatriation of the people and the relief and rehabilitation as well. This is Tayyaba signing off. Thank you.